Hi, and welcome to our lesson on author's characterization techniques. Today, we are going to answer the question, what techniques does an author use to create a character when writing? Be sure to jot down some notes and also any questions that you may have to take back to your teacher after the lesson. So during our last lesson, we talked about building a character and how does an author show character traits. Some of the different ways that we discussed include physical characteristics, point of view, motivation, conflicts, and relationships. If you have any questions about those, be sure to go back and watch the last lesson or ask your teacher. Today we are actually going to be discussing writing techniques that an author uses when writing in a story. So we will look at 5 new techniques, and those we will look at today. So let's get started. There are 2 different kinds of techniques that an author uses when creating characters in a story. The first is called direct characterization, and this is when an author tells you directly about the characters. There are 4 indirect characterization techniques, and they are as follows. The first one is dialogue, and dialogue refers to what characters say. You can usually recognize dialogue because it's in quotation marks. The second is actions, what the character does in a story. The third type of indirect characterization would be the inner thoughts and feelings of a character. And finally, the last piece of indirect characterization is what others may say about the character or how they react to the character within the story. So let's take a look at these a little more closely. Our first one was the direct characterization. This is what the author tells us directly about a character. Let's look at a few examples. Our first example is from Story of an Hour. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. Here we learn immediately that Mrs. Mallard has some kind of heart trouble. This is obviously an important key piece of her character that the reader needs to know, and the author tells us this right off the bat in the beginning of the story. Second example. This is from The Monkey's Paw. As her husband entered the room, he was followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing him. So we have a picture here of Sergeant Major Morris coming into the room. He's tall, he's burly, he's, picture big shoulders, but he's got beady little eyes and rubicund of visage. If you don't know what rubicund is, it's a key word. Go look it up and see if you can picture what Sergeant Major Morris looks like. The author's giving it all to you right there. Our third example is from A Farewell to Violet. Again, right in the beginning of the story, we have blue eyes started to water. "Adria, my son, don't you cry," Nicole ordered her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Right off the bat, the author's telling you something about Nicole's appearance. We know now that she has blue eyes. This is a character trait, and it's directly stated and given to us, the readers, in the story by the author. Our first type of indirect characterization is the dialogue. These are the words spoken by the characters. So go ahead and read these 2 different passages and then answer the question, which passage gives you more interesting information about these characters? Did you say the second one was more interesting? Most likely. It definitely has a whole lot more detail and dialogue. You get a really good picture of the conversation that's going on between our 2 characters. Number 1 would serve as a great summary to number 2. Actions. Actions are what the character does. So watch out for differences between what a character may say and what he actually does. Here's a good example. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think that he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Me," replied the son. So this was from The Monkey's Paw, and again, very beginning of the story, we get to know Mr. White a little bit better here. So look at the very first piece here. What is the difference between what Mr. White is saying here, and what he is actually doing? So looking at what he's saying, he says, hark at the wind. So he seems to be talking about the weather. Yet the author tells us something that he's doing and something that he's seeing. He's seen a fatal mistake. He and his son are playing chess, and he sees that he did something that could mean the end of the game for him. And he was desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. So he's saying, hark at the wind. He's telling his son, listen to the wind, trying to distract his son from seeing the mistake that he's made, although later it goes on and we can see that the son wasn't fooled at all. But now we've learned that Mr. White is somewhat manipulative. He's a little bit selfish. He's playing his son in a game, and he's definitely wants to win this game. And at this point in the story, we don't know how old his son was. His son could be like, 7, 8 years old, and he's, trying to cheat a little bit, distracting his son. Not the nicest guy, right? Okay, so actions definitely help us understand a character. And again, watch for differences between what characters say and what they do. It clues you in a lot of the time to what the character is really like. Inner thoughts and feelings. Now, this is the easiest way for an author to share information about a character's true personality. Okay, and often an author will use first-person point of view to help share information about his or her characters. Let me look at the picture here. Have you look at this picture. There are two gentlemen here. One of them seems pretty dressed up. The other one is kind of dressed up in an old jester's outfit. Anybody who's read The Cask of Amontillado can probably guess this is from that. But looking at their faces, if you've never read it, if you don't know the story, both gentlemen seem pretty happy, right? They seem lively, and he seems to be smiling, so they seem pretty happy together. If you hadn't read the story, you might think they're friends, right? What do you learn about the narrator from this passage? It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. What can you get out of that? Did you understand when it says, as was my wont, to smile in his face? I'm smiling in his face, but that's not truly how I'm feeling. He did not perceive that my smile was at the thought of his immolation. Okay, again, it might have something to do with vocabulary, so a close reading and having a dictionary nearby might help you in understanding this. But immolation means destruction. So he's not smiling at Fortunato because he's friends with him. He's smiling at Fortunato because he's looking forward to killing him. That tells you a lot about our narrator, does it not? Poor Fortunato. And lastly, we have what others may say about or how they react to the character. Often a close look at a character's reactions to another character can help the reader get a clearer picture of the character, okay? So it's all about interactions and reactions between characters. This is especially true when you're watching movies or TV shows, but often in a book it's very telling as well. So get used to paying attention to how characters react and work together in order to understand characters better. What we're going to do now is move into a clip for you to see this in action, and I want everybody to listen closely to what the other characters say about Aunt Fanny, and you will know who Aunt Fanny is as soon as it gets going. But I want you to think about, and we're going to come back to the classroom and talk about this right after the clip, what kind of person do you think she is? Not necessarily based on what she looks like, but based on what the other characters say about her. So if you need to, you can go ahead and rewind that and watch it again, and then be ready to talk about that when we come back to the classroom. And that's it. See you back.